It's been a tectonic shift in the Israel-Iran conflict after the United States of America bombed 3 nuclear facilities in Iran, in Fordow, in Natanz and in Isfahan. And in retaliation, Iran has already began its missile attacks on Israel. And we here at News9 are getting you all the latest on the conflict that's continuing to escalate with every passing day. Now, Donald Trump announced that U.S. has successfully, quote-unquote, completed strikes on 3 nuclear sites in Iran, claimed that these key enrichment facilities had been totally and completely obliterated. The sites that were struck were Fordow, Natanz and Isfahan. Let's first listen to what Donald Trump had to say and Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's reaction to it.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. It was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue.
Congratulations, President Trump. Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of the United States will change history. In Operation Rising Lion, Israel has done truly amazing things. But in tonight's action against Iran's nuclear facilities, America has been truly unsurpassed. It has done what no other country on earth could do. History will record that President Trump acted to deny the world's most dangerous regime the world's most dangerous weapons. His leadership today has created a pivot of history that can help lead the Middle East and beyond to a future of prosperity and peace. President Trump and I often say, peace through strength. First comes strength, then comes peace. And tonight, President Trump and the United States acted with a lot of strength. President Trump, I thank you. The people of Israel thank you. The forces of civilization thank you. God bless America. God bless Israel. And may God bless our unshakable alliance, our unbreakable faith.
Now, the Fordow fuel enrichment plant, located about 100 kilometers southwest of Tehran, was bombed. Visuals of that bombing moment on your screens. Now, 6 American B-2 stealth bombers were used in these strikes. And sources say that the U.S. also utilized a 30,000-pound bunker buster bomb. It's called the GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, with 6,000 pounds of explosives. These bombs can penetrate about 18 meters of concrete or more than 60 meters of earth before exploding, according to experts. It's the first known instance of the bomb being used operationally. Also, Navy submarines of the U.S. fired 30 TLAM cruise missiles at two other sites, Natanz and Isfahan. Even as a B-2 stealth bomber dropped two bunker buster bombs on Natanz. The B-2 that struck the Iranian nuclear sites flew non-stop for about 37 hours from their base in Missouri in the U.S., refueling several times mid-air, according to a U.S. official who spoke on conditions of anonymity. Iranian officials have said that there is no danger to the residents living near the nuclear facilities hit by the U.S. strikes. Senior Iranian sources have told Reuters news agency that most of the highly enriched uranium at the Fordow plant was moved to an undisclosed location prior to the U.S. attack, and that the number of personnel at the Fordow site had been reduced to a minimum. Other accounts show that prior to the U.S. strikes at Fordow, there was an increase in logistics at the site, hinting at the last-minute evacuation from Iran's nuclear site. It looks like the U.S. response was indeed delayed and the Iranians were informed beforehand about the impending attack. Media reports in the U.S. citing U.S. officials have claimed that Washington contacted Tehran through diplomatic channels on Saturday night to inform that its plans were limited to airstrikes and did not seek a regime change. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has said that the U.S. has violated the UN Charter and international law by attacking Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities. He said that the attack is outrageous and that it will have far-reaching consequences. Araghchi also warned that Iran reserves all possible options to protect its interests in the light of the U.S. attack on its nuclear facilities. And now being joined by Ellie Pipers, Director, International Relations, Israel Defense and Security Forum, who's joining us live from Jerusalem. We also have Ambassador Ashok Sajjanar, former Indian diplomat, and Major General Sanjay Meston, defense expert, also joining us. Thank you all of you for being with us here on the broadcast on News9 on this important day. Eli Pipers, let me begin with you. Right now, Iran has threatened to withdraw from the NPT, from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, saying that it has the right to withdraw from it, whereas Israel continues to claim that Iran has been violating the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty forever and cheating the international community.
I completely agree with your statement, and first of all, thank you for having me on this very auspicious day. I would argue that you can't have international treaties unless there is accountability, unless there is enforcement. And the way that Iran has flagrantly violated this agreement, the goodwill of the international community to engage with them, to look away of various human rights violations, and obviously the violation when it comes specifically to the nuclear activity. At some point, there has to be accountability. Otherwise, it's meaningless. And I think today, President Trump reestablished the authority of any kind of international agency that oversees nuclear weapons. And hopefully, they have learned the lesson not to violate it so flagrantly in this way.
Stay with us. Let me take this across to Ambassador Ashok Sajjanar as well. Ambassador Ashok Sajjanar, it looks like Iran is in no mood to back down despite the fact that both the Israel and US have bombed its nuclear sites. The threat of radioactivity because of these attacks continue to exist, even as the further attacks and more such strikes seem imminent.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on the show. You're very right. As far as words are concerned, I think Iran is making all the right noises. But whether it can really follow up these words with action, I think that's a big question mark. That's a very moot point, because we've seen in the past also that whenever it has been subjected to similar attacks, it has made all these, both allegations as well as these threats that it is going to take action and react and all, but then I think its capacity is limited, particularly to act against the United States. And I think it has been diminished and degraded very severely over the last year or 2 years, even since October 2023, because it had all those proxies, Hezbollah, that is, a pale shadow of what it used to be earlier. Hamas has been completely, so to say, decimated. And Houthis are, of course, they continue to flex their muscles. But there is very little that Iran can do against the United States. It does continue to act against Israel. And that is why you would see that it is already about 12 hours since the Americans bombed these 3 sites in Iran. But so far, there has been no action from Iran on any of the U.S. military assets in the region, in West Asia, or any of the, where the U.S. soldiers are stationed. And there are a large number of bases, whether it is in Qatar or it is in Bahrain or it is in Saudi Arabia or in, some of the other places also. So there is, I don't think Iran has much of an appetite to go down that way because of the threats that it has received from Mr. Trump, who said that, the fate is going to be much worse if Iran were to retaliate against it. And so if it continues to be, some sort of shooting and firing of missiles at Israel and Israel hitting back, and after all, we'll have to see how many missiles Iran does have. But two things here. One is that, Prime Minister Modi has spoken to President Pezeshkian and told him that it should be resolved, there should be de-escalation, it should be resolved through dialogue and diplomacy. That's what most of the other world leaders and countries have spoken about, whether it's in Europe or even within the region. So I think if it can be tamped down, that would be good for everyone concerned so that it doesn't escalate into a regional flagration. And the last point that Mr. Arakchi just mentioned, that he'll be traveling to Russia to meet President Putin. So, of course, Iran is very keen that Russia should mediate. Mr. Putin is keen that he should mediate. But of course, Israel is not particularly happy because Russia is totally, and China are totally in the camp of Iran. So we'll really have to wait and see as to how this develops and evolves.
Stay with us. Iran's Foreign Minister Syed Abbas Arakchi has condemned America's brutal military aggression, as it called, against Iran's nuclear sites, stating that it is the U.S. and Israel who have repeatedly, quote-unquote, blown up diplomacy. Let's listen in.
The U.S. military attack on the territorial integrity and national sovereignty of a UN member state carried out with genocidal Israeli regime, carried out in collusion with the genocidal Israeli regime, has once again revealed the extent of the United States' hostility towards the peace-seeking people of Iran, who will never compromise over their independence and sovereignty. The Islamic Republic of Iran continues to defend Iran's territory, sovereignty, security, and people by all means necessary against not just U.S. military aggression, but also the reckless and unlawful actions of the Israeli regime. While President Trump was elected on a platform of putting an end to America's costly involvement of forever wars in our part of the world, he has betrayed not only Iran by abusing our commitment to diplomacy, but also deceived his own voters by submitting to the wishes of a wanted war criminal who has grown accustomed to exploiting the lives and wealth of American citizens to further the Israeli regime's objectives. The U.S. act of aggression against Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities constitutes not only a flagrant breach of the UN Charter, especially the prohibition of the use of force under Article 2, Paragraph 4, and the obligation to respect the state's territorial integrity and sovereignty, but also a violation of UN Security Council Resolution 2231. It cannot be emphasized enough how much of a devastating blow that the US, a permanent member of the Security Council, has dealt to the global non-proliferation regime. We were in the middle of diplomacy. We were in the middle of talks with the United States when Israelis blew it up. And again, we were in the middle of talks and negotiation with Europeans, happened only 2 days ago in Geneva, when this time Americans decided to blow it up. So we were in diplomacy, but we were attacked militarily. So it was not Iran, but the US who betrayed diplomacy. They betrayed negotiations. When at the middle of negotiations with us, they gave green light to Israelis, if not instructed them to attack Iran's nuclear facilities. I think they have proved that they are not men of diplomacy, and they only understand the language of threat and force. And this is very unfortunate. And the last one, and the most dangerous one, was happened only last night, when they crossed a very big red line by attacking nuclear facilities. I don't know how much room is left for diplomacy.
Let me take this across to Major General Sanjay Mestan, defense expert who was with us on the broadcast. Major General Sanjay Mestan, how do you view that response from Iran in the aftermath of the U.S. strikes? Both the U.S. and Israel claim that their military leverage that Iran has been severely reduced, and it's about time that they come to the negotiation table.
Yeah, absolutely true. Ideally, both sides should come on the negotiation table, but that will not happen. Firstly, what Iran will do, everything, the options depend on the capabilities it has, and also after analyzing its threats. So firstly, if I analyze Iranian threats today or weaknesses, they are as follows. One, their air defense systems are by and large, I can use the word defunct, and therefore that has given Israel total air supremacy, air control over the Iranian space. Number two, the Mossad has infiltrated effectively and eliminated most of the top IRGC commanders and of course the nuclear scientists. So this again shows one of the biggest weaknesses is that infiltration has been done into the Iranian system. The third drawback of theirs is their refineries are an open target, their gas sites are an open target, and therefore that again is the weakness of vulnerability. And of course, the other biggest vulnerability is the combined strength of the United States and of course the Israelis, which will make a tremendous impact on Iran. Now, what are their strengths or capabilities? And that will lead on to options. Their capabilities are, of course, their missiles, number one. Number two, their capability is, of course, their terrorists, because they have resorted to terrorism, and through that, the options will emerge. And of course, then there are militias based in Iraq and few of the other countries. So what are the options? Now, options is dependent on what the end state Iran is looking for. And end state, they themselves are not very clear as to what they are looking for. They've only stated that they will destroy the US interest and, of course, keep targeting Israel. So this is a vague end state. Now, let's assume that if it is a vague end state and their aim is only to destroy the US assets. So therefore, the options are either they can use their militias to strike the US base in Iraq, which is in close proximity. But I presume the US base in Iraq probably by now may have been even evacuated and sent to Syria. Why Syria? Because you are aware after the regime change, the same President Trump had gone and met the present ruler of Syria. And of course, I would also highlight the Pakistan factor. The Iranians are aware that President Trump had, a lunch engagement with Munir, and therefore Iran is also aware that another front could be opened by Trump in case anything happens through the the Pakistani air bases, which shall and will not will be made available. There is no denying of the fact. So, keeping these options, I think Iran has limited options because if it targets U.S. assets in Middle East, let me tell you, they will be further strategically isolated in Middle East by all the Arab countries because it's going to hurt their economic interest and all their interests. So therefore, I feel that Iran perhaps would avoid targeting any of the Gulf states or the Arab states where the US troops are deployed. So the best option is to think of targeting some assets. And today also you would have heard that the Americans have ordered the US embassy to evacuate from Iran or from Israel, from Iraq. And therefore they are thinning out. So probably one of the targets could be in Iraq itself. The next targets could be using Houthis to target the American flotilla, which is in large number operating in the Indian Ocean and of course the Arabian Sea. But that seems to be a remote possibility. And last possibility is that they can use one of the missiles to be targeting any of the ships. So if that happens, I think America and Israel are well prepared in terms of intelligence, their networking, their surveillance networks, and as it is, we are watching that some of their hypersonic missiles are getting through the air defense systems in Israel. So that possibility exists. But the last question which anyone would ask, even the Iranians should ask themselves, even if they target some U.S. interest, what will they achieve? That is the whole thing. Israel and America have achieved their strategic objective. What was their strategic objective? To target the Iranian nuclear facility. They were very clear in their strategic objectives. So that they seem to be having achieved it. But what is the strategic objective of Iran? Iran's stated objective is destroy Israel forever, wipe off it from the world's map. That is no objective. So here also they are quite confused in the end state. Now they are making emotional statements, rhetoric statements. They will do something. But I agree with Ambassador that there is a big difference between saying something and executing on ground. And executing on ground depends on the options which they have. And that is why I've highlighted their strengths and weaknesses. So now they have to take a rational decision. If they take an irrational decision, I think Iran will suffer in the end. Thank you.
Right. Stay with us, Major General Sanjay Mestel. Let me take this across to Eli Pipers, Director, International Relations, Israel Defense and Security Forum, who also continues to be with us in the broadcast. Eli Pipers, talk to us in terms of, where does this leave Israel at this stage? What will be Israel's next steps going forward from here on? Because the retaliatory strikes from Iran have already begun, since, just a matter of hours after the U.S. strikes, you saw a wave of missiles from Iran attack Israel, which means that, Israel will have to take action to both combat the incoming missiles from Iran and also further its own military campaign.
Absolutely. Israel is going to continue with the campaign as long as Iran continues to threaten us. The fact that the U.S. and Israel now both see Iran's nuclear capabilities, nuclear weapon program, as an inherent threat to their own country's survival was a major achievement. But Iran still poses a threat. Iran has shot over 500 missiles at us, while the Israeli Defense Force have been able to shoot down 95% of all of those attempts, 99% of all of the drones that they've sent over. The reality is some get in. Israel is attacking strategic military sites, so there's very limited civilian casualties. Unfortunately, Iran continues to attack civilian areas, and anytime that there is a hit, they significantly impact our civilians, and therefore Israel is going to continue fighting. has many more targets that it will be targeting, and it will be continuing on until Iran surrenders. As President Trump says, and frankly, as Prime Minister Netanyahu has said, Iran needs to surrender. They need to understand. They need to call off the dogs. This all started on October 7th when Iran greenlit an attack by all of their proxies on Israel, initially with Hamas, then Hezbollah and the Houthis. And a year and a half later, not only are all of those proxies devastated, decapitated, humiliated, but we even have seen the leadership of Iran, their nuclear scientists, their military leaders, their intelligence leaders, they're all dead. And it will continue. As long as Iran continues, they will continue to be at risk.
Right. Ambassador Ashok Sajjanar, at this stage, both the U.S. and Israel are saying the same thing, that the Iranian regime needs to come to the negotiation table. Both of them state that the regime change in Iran is not their main objective, but deterrence of the threat, twin threats posed by Iran in terms of both nuclear and ballistic missiles, deterrence of that threat and securing the region and the world from it is the stated ambition.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's what Israel has been saying. You know, for it, it's an existential threat if Iran becomes a nuclear weapon state, and it's always been acting. And possibly it found that you know, this was a good time when Iran is at its weakest, so you know, to defang it and take away the capability. So I think this was a good opportunity to be used. And we saw what Mr. Trump had done in his first term when he had moved out of the JCPOA in 2018. But right now, when he came, he thought that he could negotiate, but he was not able to do it. And Mr. Netanyahu forced Mr. Trump's hand, and we saw what happened early today morning. So I think that is, as far as the nuclear enrichment program, that very significantly, although the final results, final details will need to become available. What Iran is saying that, you know, very little damage was suffered at the Fordow site, but what America, what Mr. Trump has said that, you know, has been completely obliterated. So we'll really have to wait and see if you know, the uranium was moved out of there, where was it taken, does it still continue to present a threat? But of course, most of the nuclear scientists of Iran, they have been killed. And as far as the ballistic missile threat is concerned, that is, I think, also been degraded very significantly, because many of the, as we hear, many of the launchers, they have been destroyed. So I think in that context also, significant progress, significant result as far as Israel is concerned. So we'll really have to wait and see. I think by and large, the major military objectives of the United States and Israel seem to have been achieved. So if Iran were to possibly put down arms, and I think what will be important for the United States is also you know, signing of an agreement where Iran decides and agrees to give up on enrichment of uranium in its own territory, because that is the one issue that the two sides could not agree on when the negotiations were going on. And that is something that is quite unacceptable to the United States and anathema to both US and Israel.
Ambassador Ashok Sajjanar, stay with us. Following the strikes by the U.S. at Iran's nuclear facilities, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke with the President of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, expressing deep concern at the recent escalations and called for immediate de-escalation, dialogue and diplomacy. Taken to social media platform X, PM Modi wrote, and I quote here, "We discussed in detail about the current situation, expressed deep concern at the recent escalations, reiterated our call for immediate de-escalation, dialogue and diplomacy as the way forward, and for early restoration of regional peace, security and stability," unquote. Prime Minister Modi has emphasized the need for a peaceful resolution, diplomatic resolution, even as Iran's ambassador to the UN called for an emergency Security Council meeting for what he described as America's heinous attacks and illegal use of force against Iran. Now, Iran has said that UN's most powerful body must take all necessary measures to hold the US accountable under the international law and the UN Charter. This after Iran's foreign minister tweeted that the US, a permanent member of the UN Security Council, has committed a grave violation of the UN Charter, international law and the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty by attacking Iran's nuclear installation. There has been no official response from Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei as yet, with reports suggesting that he could be in a bunker.